Thank you for welcoming me home. I appreciate it. Wow, Alycia, you are beautiful to be disabled. What happened to you? Do you think you'll heal one day? You are so brave. I could never, ever, ever live like that. Excuse me, miss, you're in the way. Isn't there a place for people like you? This is ableism. And these are common statements that I've endured most of my life. And if my parents would have listened to these things or thought the same way, I potentially would not be here today. But they did something groundbreaking for their time, and it's such a beautiful thing. My journey on inclusion started literally when the cell split into two, and I was born with my beautiful identical twin sister, Regina. And though we have many of the same identical twin characteristics that you would expect, same eyes, same hair, same complexion, same smiles, we even had the same want and will to live and be a part of this life. But there was one significant difference. She would be able to walk, and I'll never know how that feels. I was born with sacroiligenesis, which is basically underdevelopment of my spinal cord at the sacrum, sprinkled with a good amount of internal issues. This has led me to live this life from my beautiful wheelchair. I was born in 1975, which dates me, but it was an amazing time to be born because this was a time in our society where we were wanting to include people with disabilities. And my dad, as a young child, would remind me often, Alycia, you have no idea how lucky you are to have been born exactly when you were. And it's taken me most of my life to really understand what that means. Powerful timing to literally be born in the right place at the right time. This a decade after the Civil Rights Movement, a time where our solidarity came together more than ever. A time where we as a society wanted to aim to treat people fairly and equally. This was fueled by a society that wanted to make love and not war, and it opened the door to the theory of inclusion, which included people with disabilities too. And back in the 70s when I was born, with major medical challenges like I had that were thought by doctors to be impossible to overcome, or if I was lucky enough to overcome, would present a lifetime of immense challenges, not worth living. This was a time in our society where we still wanted to hide away what was considered inferior. And in this case, that was me. And my parents were young, 23. They didn't know what to do. They followed doctors' recommendations and they put me in a hospital, a long-term care facility where I was not expected to make it. Days, weeks, months went by. Countless surgeries, tons of close calls, and I checked off every one of those boxes and survived. But the fact of the matter is I could have lived the rest of my life behind those walls, as so many like me have in our histories past. The hidden away, the forgotten ones. But my parents knew in those very moments that the decisions that were being made for me on my behalf that would dictate my life path were being led by so many unknowns and so many assumptions about how terrible a life like this would surely be. She's abnormal. She's deformed. She will never sit up. She will never function in our society. She will require major medical intervention her entire life to sustain life. She will never function like other women. Her life is not worth living. And in those moments, they did something amazing. They did something courageous. They did something that changed my life forever. One word. They said, no. And they changed their minds. And they forged a new path. A path less traveled towards inclusion. And in those moments, they decided that I was a part of them, just the same as Regina, and that we were better together than apart. And ultimately, I got to go home too. But that's when the journey began. medically, physically, environmentally, socially, emotionally, to figure this thing out called inclusion as a family way before it was something to aim for in our society. And there was hard times, a lot of them. But you know what else? There was amazingly cool times, really good times. I had been accepted into the experiment of life, the experiment of inclusion. I would be the first generation of children to face the raw elements of inclusion and integration, and there was so many no ways, absolutely nots. Instead of absolutely yeses, let's try to adapt and give her a chance to try. So as a child growing up, as a young woman in school, as a college level student, as a woman entering the workforce, and on and on and on, when these ideas were first introduced to inclusion, they were also somewhat of an experiment on inclusion alongside me. And in all of this, my parents had one goal, which was for me to have the same opportunities and experiences that Regina would. And in this, they instilled in me, Alycia, you can. Alycia, you will, and you should. And they gifted me the strategic tool of belief, the belief that anything is possible if I'm willing to try. And in that, I would be ready for all of the times in my life that I would face challenges on my own in a world that was not ready to believe in me over somebody else. And over time, I know people are watching me. They're absorbing, they're learning to believe. And I need to make my actions count. My actions will widen the doors of opportunity for those that follow me. Ableism. What in the heck is this word? Who knows? I didn't know what it was. Who's tempted to do a quick Google search? I had no clue. Ableism was created in the 60s and 70s during the disability rights movement. It's a term where we basically, when we favor one over somebody with a disability, it's when we look at somebody with a disability as if they need to be fixed to be whole. Or we look at somebody with a disability and define them solely by their disability, and we miss the person altogether. It's not recognized commonly in our society because it's so ingrained in what we think about disability. And so we don't even know it's there. I didn't even know it was there. And then once I knew what it was, I was like, no way. I'm not associating myself to that word. Absolutely not. I put in way too much work. Something that's going to devalue and underestimate my abilities in life, in love, in education, professionally, socially, environmentally, structurally, and on and on and on. But it's there. It's the way we perceive somebody living a life like mine versus a life like yours. It's the no ways, absolutely not, she can't, definitely exclude, don't adapt, do not invite, do not befriend, do not love, do not hire. It's the fear and the pity lens in which we see people living with disabilities through. So, and in this, it's, I've been on this journey with it. And what I have found is it's the inventor, the creator of common stigmas and biases that pertain to disability in our society. It manifests things like pity and exclusion and stereotyping and discrimination. And when we favor someone over someone else in our society, that someone else suffers. Self-doubt, lack of confidence, insecurities, hesitance, embarrassment. And the worst part of all, we start believing these things sometimes ourselves, and it is crippling. Way more crippling than this will ever be. Harvard Business Review defines ableism as a discrimination or social prejudice against people with disabilities based on the belief that typical abilities are superior. It's the thief in the night of inclusion. It's the blockade to our collective pathway straight to inclusion for everyone. So I'm here today to share with you through my perspective what this word is and let you know that it's out there, because how do we fix what we don't know or see? And so through my perspectives, I'm here to share that. And we need to shift our perspectives to start believing impossible for everyone. And the only way we do this is we disable ableism. We flip that switch off. We disable it in our thinking. We disable it in our actions. We disable it in our beliefs. This is the modern pathway to inclusion. The first time that I can clearly remember taking my first unsolicited spin with ableism, I was in the 4th grade. And when this story happened, it's safe to presume most of the people that were involved in it, probably all of them, had no idea even what the word was. I attended an elementary school where all of the children with disabilities were segregated into a separate classroom. And my mother stayed true to her belief and her mission to have me experience everything that Regina would in life. And so she fought for me to be integrated in regular classrooms. I was the only student with a disability at this school, integrated. It was a big deal back then. And so I was out at recess one day, playing and minding my own business. And this particular little boy would chase me around the playground, and he would call me Gorilla Arms. And I don't know how you process shame at that young of an age, but what I will tell you is it was one of the most embarrassing moments of my entire life. And I share with you now this story to see it through the lens of the adults. For when they caught wind of this, they immediately took action. And the next day, this little boy's punishment was to ride around in a wheelchair for one whole day, so he could feel what it would be like to be me. There he was at recess, struggling in his wheelchair. There he was in class, struggling in that wheelchair. There he was at lunch, struggling in the wheelchair. Monumentally more embarrassing than the term Gorilla Arms could have ever been. For me, and I'm sure for him as well. And what I realized much later in life is the adults were innocently trying to teach this little boy compassion of someone else, so he would know how it would feel to put his shoes in my wheels, in hopes that he would never, ever make fun of somebody with a disability again. But what it did, in a single moment, a human-to-human innocent moment, was it taught every child on that playground that day, along with every adult, as well as it taught this little boy, and it taught me, that living with a disability is a punishment, and that living a life like mine is inferior to a life like yours. And these are how the lessons of ableism are taught so innocently. And they're lessons that impact a lifetime. The good news is I grew from this little girl into the woman that you see today. And what I have realized is my many differences are what make me beautiful and capable. And I show my strength and my abilities through my strong arms. Oftentimes now being complimented by perfect strangers on how beautiful my arms are. Graduated from Gorilla Arms to Arm Envy. Thank you very much. But the deal is here, we need to shift perspectives. And, we can't hide away our differences like the doctors wanted to when I was young. We need to, like my parents, embrace them, honor them, experience them, believe in them, discuss them, share them, include them as life's beautiful treasures. And the moral of the story is not to blame anyone at all. The moral is we don't always have the right answers, but we will never, ever find the right answers unless we are willing to put in the hard, collective, uncomfortable, ongoing work that it requires to learn about one another and figure this out together. And we have to be willing to push away what we've been taught by our past and, push away not believing today and move into tomorrow and start believing in the new possibility of tomorrow for everyone. And what I have also realized over time is our first attempt is often wrong too. But the more we try and the more we experience and the more we discuss together, the more we get it right together. This is inclusion. And the only way we get there is we disable ableism. We flip that switch off and we turn on believing impossible for all of us. This is our modern pathway to inclusion. So today, I'm here to give you a gift that my parents gave to me. I would love to gift to you. Together, we absolutely can. Together, we absolutely should. And together, we absolutely will. If we are willing to try together, we are stronger together than apart. Our differences are life's beautiful treasures. They are our strengths. They are core to what make us uniquely able. Thank you.